Hey, Jason, thanks for joining us today's way of getting started. Give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure being here. And again, I certainly appreciate getting the opportunity to speak with you. And I'm a big fan. And so this is a pure pleasure. And also, I thank you very much for your team to get me on here. I know Bree did a great job getting me here too as well. So thank you very much. So just kind of back up. I actually worked in this world for a long time within sales. I am or worked in the Silicon Valley for quite a few years. I've done about 5 different startups, and with that said, I actually have accumulated a lot of interesting experiences, needless to say. So today, I'd like to kind of walk through some of those experiences with you, and hopefully, there might be something that some folks can grab onto that might be beneficial.
Sure. Well, give us a sense of why startups. What do you like about them? Why do they fit your personality?
I love startups because it's a natural fit for me because I really enjoy having uh, just that ability to work naturally with the founder. I like working with sometimes the board members, the VCs. I like working with different salespeople. I like that sense of adventure, and
Yeah.
more importantly, I really enjoy getting a chance to do something new. And sometimes. Sometimes as you get purchased, you move on to the next, the next big thing. But I really do enjoy getting a chance to build something and then, say goodbye to your child and then move on to the next one. And it's been a great experience. So.
Yeah. But they're also challenging in that you typically don't have brand recognition. The
Mhm.
marketing engine hasn't warmed up yet. So
Yeah.
to say the
Yeah.
least. And you're
No,
kind of on your own to build it from scratch.
No, absolutely. Matter of fact, I always say, in a startup, you don't have marketing, you don't have inside sales. They give you a ball of twine and some water, and they throw you in the desert, and they say, go for it, And so that's how I like it. I've really enjoyed that. So marketing's a luxury, inside sales is a luxury. As I started to move forward to companies that developed, there were some situations where now that we have a marketing department more that we have an inside sales group, it takes away from the fact that as an individual contributor, marketing is and inside sales more of a quota buster than a quota maker. So
Yeah.
I'm responsible for my own world, as we know, and it's important to be able to generate that and be able to control your own destiny from that angle. And that's what I really like about startups is that you really have that ability to work with all these different contributors, and whether it be a VC or a CEO or an SC or whomever it is, you're all on the same team, you're all on the same table, and then you can actually build from that. So.
Yeah. But it's also scary
Mhm.
because you don't have any customers typically. You have to start from scratch. You have to build off of your network. What's your approach to get started?
So it's really interesting. I have a different approach. I have a way. One of the benefits that I have is that I try to, and I'll kind of step back for a moment. So my background is at a speech communication degree from Colorado State University, which
So
is
natural progression.
natural. It goes into a story
Good.
actually, which is a great again a great university. But what happened was in the mid '90s, I got to Silicon Valley, and no one hired somebody with a speech communication degree at all. And so I was trying to figure out a way, how can I socially engineer this that I can get into these companies? And so what I did was I learned everything I could in the Valley. I went to Intel's museum. I went to Sand Hill and sat in the coffee shop and waited for the VCs to come out and talk to them. I went to the Pepper Tree and sat in and listened to what people had to say. I did everything I could to try to absorb myself within the Valley. Then I came up with more of a social engineering strategy in the mid 20s. So I basically said, you know what, I'm going to become a headhunter. So I became a headhunter in order to socially engineer myself to get into these large companies, because
Smart.
once you got in, then you get that seal of approval, and then you're, you know, you have your ticket, you punch that ticket, and then you go from there. It's kind of a long answer to a short short question, but once I had that that blessing, I was able to get in, and that's where I started doing all my startups. But what was interesting was once I got into the real world, I looked at different ways of communicating to all the different executives, and I did that by learning how or what they had to say when I was trying to get into that world, meaning that, you know, emotional intelligence and all these different attributes that I had, or I learned, I should say, really helped me along. And again, kind of going back into it, Daniel Goldman on the emotional intelligence side, when he wrote that book in the mid 90s, people didn't really know what that was. And where I was coming from was that's how I sold. I sold by understanding what people needed. So it wasn't just like, I'm just going to do a bunch of marketing. You know, to your point, it's like, what do you do without marketing? What do you do without business development? You have to take it on your own shoulders to go out and be successful, you know? And that's what I really did. And matter of fact, he presented here in Santa Barbara last night at an event, and he was talking about self-awareness and, you know, basically motivation and empathy and all these wonderful things that I really took to heart, you know, and that's something that I really try to understand. And there's other motivational factors that I've done in my life that I try to look at. Matter of fact, going back to college, I look at the way people, Aristotle used to say, ethos, pathos, and logos. If you have you know, if you're ethical and you're logical and you're passionate, you'll be good orator. Well, I applied that to sales. So when you're talking to people, you have to have that way about you. You can't just be, you know, I'm kind of going off a tangent, but you can't necessarily go off or you can't really, you know, depend on somebody. You have to like interact with people and talk with them. So.
Well, that usually takes about 10 to 15 years of sales experience to come to.
It's true. It
How did you
does.
come to it so fast? Was it the speech?
Well, you know, it's just being a nerd. I really enjoy how people interact and talk, and more importantly, I come from a very wonderful community in Santa Barbara County, in San Ynez and Santa Barbara, and my mom's a teacher, and we're a very close knit community, and so how we interact with one another really comes down to saying thank you and trying to get people to just, you know, just be themselves, you know, and that's something that was very valuable to me. And you know, I have another story, but basically one of the things that I learned was as I got into this business, I realized that people really hid behind a lot of the spreadsheets, and they hid behind LinkedIn and sending out 1,000 different messages, but they didn't interact with the people themselves, you know. And I think with the whole thing with the COVID, you interact like this.
Yep.
And so I'm in my killer zone right now, because for the last year, I've had a great year, because this is how I learned how to grow up, is on a cell phone, or not cell phone, but a telephone,
Yep.
and how to interact with those people, you know, so that worked out well. But, you know, I have but going back to a story that I had, when I talked to decision makers, I talked to somebody who was a Fortune 50 company, and he was a CISO. And we talked and we got through everything. But he basically introduced me to his team, his legal team, his procurement team. And what's interesting is that I always interacted, no matter if I was 22 years old, if I was, you know, 40 something years old, where I would interact with them with their permission and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what we're doing. And by the way, I'm going to keep you updated. Now, what's interesting about that is that I closed a pretty big deal because I was interacting with him and I was giving everybody updates. At the very end of the quarter, it was more of a team effort where everybody got together and we were excited. It's 11 o'clock at night, you know, everybody's going to get this thing done. And then you fast forward to RSA, and I'm at the booth of this one company, and lo and behold, the legal people come in, and the procurement people walk in and this is after we closed the deal, and they gave me a big hug, and they're saying, congrats, you know, this was so great. And my boss looks at me and they're like, well, was that the decision maker? And I go, no, that was procurement and that was legal. And they're like, well, and they didn't get it. And they're like, well, why are they hugging you? And I'm like, because I have that relationship. And lo and behold, a year later, I got the chance to interact and work with those people. But what was interesting was, and this is actually some good advice for folks that are moving forward, You should always, I don't care if it's just, meeting somebody on the street, like I met in Silicon Valley in the early days, or you're closing a big deal, you write a personal note and you say, thank you very much for meeting me, in your own handwriting, and you send it to them, and they look at that and they go, what is this? It's actually a note. It is something that you wrote, but you send it to procurement and you send it to legal, because you know what? Those people, and the assistant who helped you get there, because that's important. And when you understand that, that was key. But you also have to have that sell with sincerity side. So you have to be that honest, good person from the heart, because it is transparent, and you can't fake that. That's all part of the joy of sales, right? So that's all part of it. So it's a longer answer to your to your
Well,
question.
I got to tell you, because about 2.5 years ago, I switched the show from interviewing mostly experts, authors, to interviewing day-to-day reps.
Yeah.
And one of the key distinctions between the very, very best
Hmm.
was just that.
Oh, yeah.
Was that handwritten note. And I was like, this is so old school, you know, but I go, how do I feel? I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I remember those people.
Yeah. And you know what? A lot of those people will still have that note today in their desk.
Yeah.
They will have that note in their desk today. And matter of fact, I closed a deal about a year ago, and I wrote a note or to this person, and it was a pretty big deal. And they actually reached out to me about 3 months ago, and they go, I still have your note in their desk. And again, nobody does that thing. No one does that, because they don't want to take the extra time to do that. And it kind of goes into that whole idea where, if you're going to be reaching out to somebody, and it kind of goes under the process, you look at a territory and you subdivide it, and my mom's a teacher. So she said to me, she goes, this is her favorite quote. She says, how do you eat an elephant? She's like, you start with the tail first, right? So, and that's really the idea of a territory. You have to start with understanding that region first,
That region.
and then that tail, and then you can actually peel it out from there. But you also have to understand the partners and the channel partners. And I've been blessed with an incredible company where I'm in right now as well, with Team Cumry. But I also have had the best SEs, sales engineers ever.
Yes.
And
Yes.
they and you stay in your swim lane, in the sense that when you go off and you tackle a territory, you don't want to be the guy, at least the account rep, who is trying to control what an SC is doing. It's your job is to do what you do, and they don't control what you do. So when you're talking to a client doesn't want to hear from the sales rep. They really don't. So you need to parlay that back and forth as you're trying to close a deal. And so many sales reps have egos into it, where they say, you know what, I'm going to control everything. And the account just laughs at them and goes, oh my gosh, let me just focus on the sales engineer.
Well, that distinction of what real control is.
Yeah.
Because when you relinquish, like you did with the procurement, legal,
Mm-hmm.
you didn't try and control them.
No.
You tried to help them, which
Absolutely.
is controlling the deal, not the people.
Yes.
Right?
But you said something that was really important, though, is it helping. And you said this, and I've watched you before when you mentioned this a couple of times. You ask people for help. You ask for help, and you take your ego and you throw it to the side,
Right.
and you ask for help. And it doesn't matter if it's legal or procurement or the decision maker. You ask for help, and if you're sincere about it, like you are, just say, hey, help me through this. You don't, you sound like a salesperson, you throw it out the window, and you're just like, you're having a conversation with somebody and say, hey, by the way, can you help me with this? I mean,
Because you will get treated the way you act.
Yes.
If you
Absolutely.
act like you're part of their team, you'll get treated like you're part of their team.
Yeah. And you get a card out of it too.
Get a card too.
But I do have a funny story. I'll tell you at the end, but I do have a funny story from a social engineering perspective. Not kind of related to that.
Well, we'll share some of these other epiphanies, because, learning that outward mindset,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a while, which is the emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it goes a lot beyond his work. because it's really putting yourself in the other person's place.
Yes.
What are
Yeah.
they facing? Not just what
Yeah.
they're feeling. What are they up against?
That's a great segue. So, I think when I first got into this business back in the day, I bought the coffee mug, I bought the T-shirt, I was ready to go, and then they got sold. And I bought the coffee mug, I bought the T-shirt, and then they got sold. So I have a whole like stack of like things that got sold. And you know what? They, like you said, the decision makers, what's going through their head? What's going through their head is um, it's really interesting. Some of my best friends have become, who are my clients are now my friends, and really senior folks. And one of the things that's interesting is that when I talk to them privately, we talk through, their job insecurities, their house insecurities, their boss insecurities, you name it. But they also ask for, hey, can you get me a job here? Or do you know somebody here? And I think it's interesting because I think too many people don't realize that these people have, there's blood and there's skin and there's a lot of pulsating things relating to these individuals, that it's not a number. So kind of going back to kind of my, small sub-regional ideas, if you can break it down into, rather than carpet bombing, and look at individuals as individuals and find out where they went to school, what their background is, especially even before a phone call, that and not sound like you're a sales guy, but really, because I love sales and I love people. So it's like, I love to find out about your background. I'd love to find out the fact of the neighborhood that you're walking in when everybody says that they know what you're doing. I'd love to find out those type of things are really cool, but people don't take the time to do that. And
Right.
that's it. But once you develop that relationship, you have that secret handshake with that person for a long time, but you have to be sincere. And that's the hard part, is that you don't want to be just like that everyday salesperson. You really want to actually help them in their career, because they're going to call you up and they're going to end up at another company, as you know, or another company or another company. But you know who they take with you along the way, because you're friends?
Friends.
Yourself.
Yeah, their network. Now, did you learn that as a headhunter? Because that is a critical skill, and we all have careers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the heading, the headhunting stuff was just out of
Brutal.
practicality.
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, and God bless them. They work very hard. It's just, but I, I was the only one, on a side note, at Colorado. So Colorado State, the way they were set up was, and again, early 90s, was they would bring in people from IBM and other people, and they would sit in and they would talk about, this is how sales should be, or this is what technology is, and this and that. And they would raise their, so I'll never forget, right before I graduated, they brought in a senior person from IBM, this one lady, super nice person. And she said, okay, so how many people out of, there's 60 people in the room, she's like, how many people want to make $20,000? A lot of people raise their hand. They're like, oh, how many people want to make 30,000? And she goes through the whole thing. And then she's like, how many people want to make 80 to 100,000 their first year? And again, this is early 90s. And I'm like the only one to raise my hand.
Okay.
And I said, and she's like, well, and then she used that as an example. So she's like, well, why is that? And I go, because I want to get into high tech sales,
You knew
And
that back then?
I knew that back then. And I just felt like that was something that was going in that direction. Now I have stories in the early years where I was fearless, and I still am, where I'll call anybody. And, I did talk to the guys from Google back in the day, or, Apple, or Jerry Yang. I actually got a framed copy of it said, say goodbye to the mall, and he's surfing on a surfboard. It said to me, he signed it. It's on my wall in my office. But it's because back in the day, it was the Wild West. It was the Wild West of technology, and you could do that. But a lot of people forget their hunting skills, right? So they forget how to hunt, in the sense of how to be sincere, how to talk to people, how to interact, how to get in and talk with somebody and not sound like a sales guy, but just simply, hey, by the way, I'm in your neighborhood. This is what I'm doing. Would love to get a chance to talk with you. But from a sincere perspective. And you know what? Guess what? If you're not interested, you don't call them every week and you don't bug them every week. You let them know that, you're lucky, with all due respect, you're lucky that I called you. I'm in your area. would love to talk to me. That's great. But you have to have that confidence. And I think too many people get desperate, or their managers tell them, call, 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 call. And then and these people just turn it off,
Right.
So,
Because
yeah.
I think people are starting to learn that that doesn't work.
No, they don't. But you know what, though? I think going back to the COVID and the Zoom calls like we are right now is teaching a younger generation how to interact face to face versus, and it's a blessing versus back in the day where they just fell into this whole cycle of, I'm just going to, LinkedIn, or just send a bunch of emails, but they forget that hunting skill.
Well, also in the socialization today, people don't talk on the phone.
No,
They
no.
text.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's this asynchronous communication.
Yeah.
When you and I grew up,
Yeah.
if you wanted to ask a girl out, you couldn't text her. You had to get on the phone.
You
Or at
did.
least when I grew up.
No, I know.
You had to get the smoke signals out and,
Yeah.
kill a bear.
You did. You really did. Until you get you had to go in the closet and take the phone and talk to somebody. And,
That's yeah.
It's like, but that's the neat thing is, I think that's why I've had such a good year this year, is that I learned that back in the day. And so when I do presentations, for example, I don't give PowerPoint I really don't. I tell people on the, like how you and I are talking, I say, listen, I'm going to talk to you for 6 minutes, maybe 7 minutes. And you can actually clock me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to give a PowerPoint presentation. And then we're going to walk through a demo. And I'm blessed with great engineers. They'll come in and say, okay, we're going to walk through this. And you just see this sigh of relief. We're like, oh, thank God, we're not doing a PowerPoint presentation,
Well, that's it. Because if that's what you're going to do,
Yeah.
record it, put it on YouTube, and point people to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do this because it's interactive.
Yes. And that's, well, and I think a lot of people hide behind PowerPoint
Slides.
presentations, or, they want to record a conversation, or they want to record this and then they want to analyze. And, it's my favorite analogy is, if somebody analyzes you too much, it's like asking a baseball player, do you breathe in or breathe out when you hit a baseball? And they're like so concentrated, do I breathe in, and that they just miss it, right?
Right.
So that's what I feel like with sales, is that you can't overanalyze it, but you have to just be yourself and just talk through things and, share things and have a great product and a great support group and have an ethical company and all these wonderful things that makes you successful. But again, there's not a lot of companies. There's some companies that aren't like that. It's just what you can do to make yourself different. And I think, as long as you can do something different, like reach out even on a telephone call. I know it's difficult, but if there's a way to do it, and when you get them on the phone or her on the phone, you want to make sure that there's a reason why you call. So you don't call by saying, hi, I'm so-and-so, and this is the name of the company that I'm with, and this is what I do, and all that stuff. You give them a reason why you're calling. So you call, you say, hey, I'm going to be in your area. I'm meeting with these people. I'd love to get a chance to meet with you. And I call it a pregnant pause. And then they pause and they go, so who are you again? And you're like, oh, I'm sorry. Let me back up. I'm with this company. This is what I do. These are the people I'm going to meet with. Love to meet with you. And then sometimes it's a second pregnant pause. But the reason why I do that is they don't have the time to listen to my host spiel. And if they're interested, they know that I'm calling for a reason. They know the dates, they know the times, they're smart people, they'll ask us what I do, and then they can make that decision. But if you go with the other way, they'll just be like, click. so it's important. That's old school. That's old school phone.
Well, it all comes down to, do they want to talk with you or they have to talk with you?
Yeah. No,
they currently don't have to talk to you. So you have to work on the want to talk with you.
Exactly. But you're also, I read an article, when you call somebody, if you give them 2 or 3 options, I will be there on Tuesday or Thursday from 8 a.m. to 11 on Tuesday, and then 3 to 4 on Thursday. You give them options, right? So right away they're going, okay, I understand. I have options. I'm making the decision if I want to see you. But you're not just calling saying, hey, oh, by the way, I'm going to send you some information, which I know I've
Finally,
heard.
somebody's going to give me some information.
Oh my gosh, thank you for calling. So
I have no information here.
Exactly. But they're getting 40 to 50 phone calls. As you know, you said it, 40, 50 phone calls a day. And it's just like, oh God, can you do something? Why should I meet with you? And if you give them a reason up front, why you're going to meet, where you're going to be, and what you're doing and who you're going to see. And by the way, this is what I do. That is so different than if you lead with the other side, and I think a lot of people don't do that typically.
Well, that's it. I had somebody in my course this week who got 5 meetings in one day.
Oh yeah.
And I'll talk to other very experienced reps. I can't get a meeting after 5 days. And I go, what are you doing? And they show me, and it's like, it's a commercial. When do you turn the TV on saying, I hope there's a good commercial on tonight?
Yeah, exactly.
Is there any new commercials on?
Oh my gosh, I got this commercial on Geico.
I wish Netflix had more commercials.
Yeah, totally.
I'm going to go on iTunes, and I hope they put some more commercials in the movies. No one does that.
That's exactly it. Yeah, no one ever, and that's the thing is, like, I look at competitors or people that I've worked in the past, and God bless them, they're great guys, and I know, and women who I know really well, and it's just like, and it's kind of fun because you get to kind of play off of what they do and how you can do it, and that's all part of sales, which is great. And they'd probably do the same thing with me, but it's the fact is, if you can get, like I tell people, if you can get that appointment, that face-to-face appointment, we're done. Your job is not to close somebody on the phone. Your job is to get me in front of somebody, period. And if you can do that, I got the rest. I tell my inside sales folks that all day long, and they're great too, but it's just like, you sit there and that's what I like to do. But I'm kind of weird because I like cold calling. So
now, when I'm sure you get exposed to a lot of different reps, what do you see most of them doing wrong, kind of in that 5 to 10 year period? The first 5 years, it's awkward, it's painful, it's scary.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think not necessarily now, but I think back in the day, I would see reps get lazy, where they rely on marketing, or they rely on business development, or they rely on your inside sales reps, and they point fingers at them because they're not getting appointments. And the reality, like I said, is you control your own destiny, right? So it's really important for you to control your own patch, your own business, in essence, your own partnerships, your own channel partnerships, you develop that. That's really critical. And it's not that they're not good. It's just, I think what happens is over time, they get kind of lazy, or they get complacent. And in some cases, some companies are so good that they never have to worry about doing anything. So it's like hunting in a game preserve, right? So you're sitting there,
Well, I mean, you've been at some, good brand names, but you've been at some startups too. I mean, early stage.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think, again, I think the thing about it is networking is really critical. And, what I tell people all the time is, when you're starting a business, the people that know the most about your sub-region or your region are your partners, are your channel partners. It's important to develop those relationships because they're going to be some of your biggest advocates, and they're going to also have eyes and ears into your accounts. So if you can talk with them about what you're doing and be on the same page, I think that's really important. And in addition to that, if I do get access to a customer, for example, I always ask, I'm like, do you want to go direct, or do you have a channel partner that you want to work with? And I always kind of encourage the channel partner because it allows me to kind of break away and allow other business to happen. And we build that relationship. And I think that's really critical.
Now, how do you handle the downside of sales, the rejection, the not winning?
Not winning. Yeah. It's everybody you're going to have bad days. You're going to have bad weeks. You're going to have bad quarters. That's just the way sales is. It's just the way life is. I think you can't dwell about it. You have to, I think you've mentioned it as well. It's like you go outside, throw water in your face, go for a walk, take a day off. I mean, you're allowed to do that. I mean, sales is extremely difficult. And so allow yourself or give yourself permission to be able to do something else, for the most part, you know.
But how about the dark winters in Santa Barbara when things, I think it rains 2 or 3 days there.
There's no winners in Santa Barbara. we don't have winners in Santa Barbara. It's always beautiful. It's always beautiful.
What's that white thing in the sky?
Yeah, I know it's always unicorns and it's always pretty. It's honestly, it is a great place to live and great people. It's just but when you go into your point about bad sales days, it's a great question. I think you just have to kind of really do a lot of self-reflecting, and talk to your friends. And really, I think the best advice I could say is some of my closest friends are the people that I've worked with through the years in all these different companies. And, you just pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm having a hard day. What do you think? You make yourself vulnerable. And it's like, hey, and they're guess what? They're going to say, yeah, I've had days like that. And so you need to work on this or work on that. And you just change it up. You just mix it up a little bit. And then you find maybe a different way of solving that problem. But you have to get that support from other people, and you have to do that self-reflection. But you don't want to kill yourself and beat yourself over the head, because most people do that, and that's not right. So,
and being a startup guy, when you look at a new startup,
yeah.
What kind of asset tests do you pick? Because there's a lot of them.
Oh my gosh, it's kind of a gut feel. Okay, so I'll tell you. I'm laughing because this happened about a year ago, 2 years ago, and it happened 3 times. So I would get these recruiters that would call me, and they would say, I have this great company and it's funded and it's, XYZ, and these are the people and this is what we do. And I'd be like, oh, okay. And then it's like the second interview, they'd be like, hey, can you do me a favor and print out your leads and then pull them up to the camera and show me your leads? And I'm like, what? And these are funded big companies. And I'm like, okay, well, that's an acid test. I'm like, I will not
a good one.
I will not work for, I'm not working for you. And so one of the things is that when companies ask you, at least at this stage in life, and they go, hey, give me, who do you know? When I hire you, who do you know? Who can you bring to the table? That's something that I don't like, because for a couple of reasons. Number one is that they're asking right away. Number two is, in order to go to a startup company, I need to know what you do. I need to learn how to hunt your animal. I need to understand what's going on. And then as a compliment later on, if I feel it's appropriate, these individuals who are my friends, I will then introduce them to you. But I never want to just, say, this is my list and this is what I'm doing. There's a sense of pride to saying, you know what, these people are people I've known through the years. I really care about them. I'm not going to expose them to some random startup company. But going back to the startup that I'm in recently, what I love about this company is the mission statement, and I'm not going to give you a whole commercial on them, but they were the nicest group of people I've ever met in my entire life. And I went in and I looked at them and the way they treated me and how nice they were and polite. I'm like, God, they were the nicest group of people I've ever met. So I actually said, I'm like, I'm gonna be here. I'm gonna join in, and it's been wonderful. So it's just a gut feeling. It's just, if people treat you correctly and nice, that's the best thing. You do look at the VCs, you look at those type of things, you look at the marketplace. You can do your homework and find out if it's saturated. In security, it is in some cases that it can be very saturated. Yeah. It's very saturated. You go to RSA and you got like what 4,000 people or something. Yeah. And it's like, and so it's, you find that our CEO said, find the company that has a deep and wide moat, yes. and fortunately that's where we are. But I think it just comes down to the people, the mission statement, the efficacy of it. And with that said, if you're successful with it, the rest, my mom always says, if you're happy, the money will follow. And I'm very happy here. So anyways.
Cool. Hey, Jason, really appreciate your time. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Um, I you can go in LinkedIn.
Yeah. Or
Yeah,
down
that's
at the Starbucks in Santa Barbara?
yeah, you can. But I do have one funny story if you want to hear it. I don't know if we have time, but I think it's kind of funny.
Hit us up.
Okay, you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing, talk about social engineering. I was trying to get into this movie studio, meeting with the CISO, and he was kind of like, yes, I like you, I don't like you, I like you, but I like you, but I don't like you. So what I did was I went down to see him, and I brought a bottle of wine from Santa Barbara, and he kept saying no, 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 and then I get to the front desk, and I tell the front desk person I'm here to see Mr. Jones or whoever it was. And he goes, okay, I'll call him up. So Mr. Jones, he's like, oh, Jason's here. And he goes, well, I don't have time, whatever. And he goes, well, he has a bottle of wine. And he goes, well, just go ahead and leave it. He's like, I can't leave it here because it's a perishable thing. And so Mr. Jones comes down, gets the wine, sees me. I close the deal a month later. So it has to do with social engineering. So no doesn't necessarily mean no, but I wanted to tell you that because I thought it was funny, but there's other ways of trying to find a way to skin a cat. So
That's a
anyway,
great one.
yeah, it was great. It was a pleasure talking to you, Brian. So thank you.